Nzimande announced his plan to probe the reasons for a perceived lack of black South Africans graduating with doctorates. Would a policy like this assist in breaking some of those barriers? Well, Dr Hleze Kunju is here with us in studio to talk about it. Welcome. It's great to have you on the program.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Your thesis, before we begin, what was it all about?
It was about isiXhosa from the Eastern Cape who moved to Zimbabwe, who were taken by Cecil John Rhodes to Zimbabwe. So it's got nothing to do with Mfecane or Pioneer Column, but it's about a group of Xhosa people who were moved from the Eastern Cape to Zimbabwe.
Okay, so this was what you did, and that's what you got your doctorate in. What was it? What was your PhD in?
In African languages.
African languages.
Yes, but I was looking at the language, how the language has survived for more than a century across borders.
Yeah. You know, I would love to know how difficult it was for you to get the thumbs up to say, absolutely, go for it. You can submit this in isiXhosa, no problem. What was it like? Was it easy? Was it difficult?
Luckily, we just had the NRF Sachi chair, headed by Professor Russell Kashula, which focuses on multilingualism and the intellectualization of African languages and education. And he was also the man who was the chairman of the language committee at Rhodes. Yeah. So he was sort of behind those. So that made a little bit easier for me, yes.
To do that. What made you want to do it in isiXhosa?
There's about three reasons that I'll give to that. First of all, I love isiXhosa, I love uXhosa, and I love amaXhosa. And secondly, I thought it would have been really disrespectful of me to write the first document in isiXhosa for amaXhosa of Zimbabwe and write it in English. Yeah. You know, so I thought I had to honor them, you know, by writing it in isiXhosa, something that they can have access to. And thirdly, I mean, we've had discussions about decolonizing the education, and African knowledge written in African languages has been really marginalized for a long time. Yeah. So I thought, it was a perfect time for me to now produce African knowledge in African languages.
It makes sense. I think that could be your fourth reason. It just makes sense. I mean, when you look at going as far as writing your PhD, surely you should do it in a language you feel comfortable with. When we talk about the fact of decolonizing Africa, I think that this is one of those reasons that we look at, one of the issues that we look at, that we do still have a very long way to go, where we're doing an interview about the fact that you wrote it in isiXhosa and not English. It doesn't make sense, does it?
No, definitely. Yeah, it doesn't.
How far away are we from letting this become the norm?
Sure. I hope we close. I mean, this is 23 years after democracy. Yeah. So I think we're slowly getting there. I think it's probably something that's going to take a lifetime. You know, we have to keep working on this. We have to. I mean, we still have to go to primary schools and high schools at school level to say that isiXhosa is not as bad as it's been made to be. You know, our African languages are not as bad as they've made to be. You can actually, be at a university and access education or produce material in your own language. So it's going to be a long way, but I think it's doable.
Yeah, you're a lecturer.
Yes, I am a lecturer.
So one of the offerings at your current institution is teaching future teachers to consider delivering these lectures in their mother tongue.
Yes, yes.
Do you deliver some lectures in your mother tongue? Are there other lecturers that are doing it?
I do in my mother tongue. Well, because I teach isiXhosa, so I have to teach in my mother tongue. We also, recognize that we're a multilingual society, multicultural society, multiracial society. So, multilingualism is really important. So I also, in classes where I don't have to teach in isiXhosa, but I try to bring in isiTswana there because I'm in a Northern Cape. So I bring in isiTswana, they bring in Afrikaans there. Work even slides, they should be available in languages that the students are comfortable with. So I think we, as academics, it's something that we really need to look on and
very seriously address it. Yes. I'm sorry that we had Dr. Nzimande here in the first hour of the program. So it would have been nice to address this question to him, actually, because he's spoken very much so about this, the plan to probe the reason for, as I said in the introduction, perceived lack of black South Africans graduating with doctorates. But I mean, perhaps language is a big barrier. And that, I imagine, is something that you see with your students. Do you feel that they would rather, obviously it's a bit biased, you're doing it in isiXhosa anyway, and that's your field of study. But for those that, you know, feel more comfortable writing chemistry in isiXhosa or Zulu or whatever language, you know, this is something that I imagine the ministry is looking at. Have you heard anything about this and how far we are in it?
I mean, for example, in Mcofimvaba, we've got a lady there called Naledi Mbudeshala, who's done something like this, where she encourages learners and does a project on learners learning maths in isiXhosa. And also right now at Solpaki University, we've got a course called isiXhosa as a language of learning and teaching. Whether you teach maths or biology or what, but you can be able to do that in isiXhosa. And I hope that in the future it will produce learners that will be scientists that can, do research or do science in their mother tongue languages.
Well, so, excellent. I wish you the best of luck going forward. And I think that you've broken down some barriers for a lot of other students that will feel comfortable doing their thesis perhaps in their home language and in their mother tongue. Well done.
And
congratulations.
So thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us, Dr. Hleze Kunju, talking to us here on the program. One of the students that wrote his thesis in isiXhosa, making him the very first Rhodes student to obtain a PhD qualification in isiXhosa. Let's take a break. When we return, we're going to continue this discussion on decolonizing education in Africa. We've got Dr. Nkosazana Moyo in studio with us. We'll talk to you after the break. Stay tuned.